Hello, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to talk about the Spring Framework. Now, the Spring Framework is used for developing large-scale software development in Java. Now, before starting the introduction of Spring Framework, let's talk about what is a framework and why it is required. So the framework is defined like this. A software framework is a concrete or the conceptual platform where the common code with generic functionality can be selectively specialized or overridden by the developers or user. Now let's understand what this definition is trying to explain. So first point, this particular definition is pointing to is about the conceptual platform. So what is a conceptual platform? Soft. Let us say we are developing a software. Now the software, why the software is required? Obviously to fulfill some business logic. So the software, whenever we are developing the software, it contains a business logic. Now the business logic is not the only part of the software development because other things also comes in picture. Let's talk about a registration process in a software in a particular business environment. Now the registration is a very common phenomenon. You can see this process in most of the web application. So whenever we are developing that registration process, uh, it comes with other things like validations. So validation of input is not the part of your business logic. It is required, but it is obviously not the part of the business logic. So if a developer start thinking about the the validations of input, then its speed of developing the code for business logic will be slowed down, right? So what is the meaning of this? See, if I want to write the code for registration, and at the same time I need to write the code for the validation, then obviously I require more time, and that is why in a particular amount of time my development of the software is a little slow. So that is why I require a platform where the things which is concerned, the things which is required for the business should be developed by me, should be developed by the developer, and rest of the things will be taken care by the platform itself. So that is what a conceptual platform is. So basically, software framework is providing you such kind of platform where you are focusing on the business logic, and rest of the things can be enabled without much labor. Now the second part of this definition is saying about the common code with generic functionalities. Now why the common code of generic functionalities is required? So let's think in obviously in terms of the registration process again. Many websites or many softwares require many websites or many software require the registration process, but every software has different way for registration. They require different data, they require different information from the user. So obviously in that scenario, the validations is also unique for different softwares, right? So can we write a common code for validating all kind of inputs? And if we are writing that kind of code, if we are providing that kind of code, then it is basically providing a generic functionality by which uh, I can fulfill my need and other developer can also fulfill their own need. So that is what the common code with generic functionality. Now the third point is pointed by this definition is selectively specialized or overridden. Now, selectively specialized means the platform is providing me the common code for say validations, for say transaction supports, etc. And do I must use those features? No. I can select uh, out of n features, I can select these three features is required for my software development. Rest of are not so important for my software development. So I can select only that three features, not the all. So that is what it is saying. And what is overridden? If the functionalities provided by the software framework is not sufficient for my need, then I can override those functionalities to achieve my need, my goal. So that is what selectively specialized or overridden. So that is all about the software framework. It provides me the platform where I can develop the business logic part of the software development much faster than uh, without the framework. It is providing me the common code with generic functionalities so that every single developer can take that benefit. And if it is providing more functionalities, then I can select certain functionalities which is required for my software development, and rest of the things will not be used by me. So it is not mandatory that whatever functionality is provided by the framework we should use it. We can select some of them, and rest of them will be untouched. And overridden, that means what? If the functionality provided by the software framework is not sufficient for my need, then I can override those functionality to mold it according to my own need. So that is what the software framework is. Now, basically, we can think software framework as a library. So it is providing me the library for software development. That library is basically containing reusable codes, and at the same time it is also providing me the API to further enhance the framework, or if something is missing and something is required for my software development, I can changes I can make changes in the framework, and then I can use the framework again. So it is like a spatial library. So that is what the framework is. Now let's talk about what is a Spring framework. Now the definition of a Spring framework is like this. The Spring framework is a Java platform that provides comprehensive infrastructure support for developing Java application. So that is how the Spring framework is defined. So if we read out the definition, then it is pointing out some special things. First thing, the Spring framework is used for Java platforms. It is not used for .NET, on PHP, etc. but it is used for Java platform that provides comprehensive infrastructure support. Now, the comprehensive infrastructure support is nothing but providing you the concrete platforms. So, it is talking about this definition is talking about a platform provided by the Spring framework for any kind of Java development. Now, the another line written here is Spring handles the infrastructure so you can focus on your application. This is again the same thing. Spring is providing me the Spring is providing you the platform by which through which you can develop the software, and you should focus on your core business logic. Most of the other parts uh, will be taken care by the Spring framework. That is what it is saying. It is providing you the infrastructure so that you can focus on uh, your your main business logic only. Okay, so that is what the Spring framework is. So let's see what is the architecture of a Spring framework. Now, a Spring framework is basically uh, a Spring framework is basically divided into certain modules. So it has not it is not like one module application. It is again a multi module application. So the base part of the Spring framework is this core part. This core, on the basis of this core part, all other part is all other part is depending upon this core part. So core part is required for all other parts also. Now the core part is basically providing uh, IOC container. We will talk about IOC later on, but it is basically providing the IOC container. Now, what is that IOC container? IOC stands for inversion of control. So it is providing me the IOC container, or in very simple terminology, we can say it is basically providing me the Spring container. So whatever functionality supported by the Spring is available in that container. So the first part is the core. The second thing is AOP. AOP stands for aspect oriented programming. Then we have DAO, data access, ORM, object relational mapping, JEE, that means enterprise services, JMX, JMS, JCA, etc. And then we have the web, that actually is like web MVC basically. So we are developing some websites using this web MVC. So this is what the architecture of a Spring framework is. All other modules like DAO, ORM, JEE, web and AOP is depending upon this core part, and everything is running inside one special container that is called the Spring container. Now here in the syllabus of GTU, only we have to discuss about this web framework, right? So we are not going to discuss anything about DAO, ORM, JEE, AOP, etc. Some core part is required obviously, and we require to discuss about this web framework. So before going to discuss about anything about web framework, let's talk about the way we are developing the software. And one of the architecture required, and that is a proven architecture for software development, is MVC. MVC stands for Model View Controller. So how that MVC look like? Okay, so MVC is looking like this. Uh, the whole software module is dividing into the three parts. One is called the view, another is called the controller, and third part is called the model. Now, what is this? What is this? What are these parts basically? So, if we have a user, any user which want to interact with the software, then it is using this view to interact with the software. So view is like a GUI or CLI which is providing a way, a gateway through which the user is interacting with the software. Now, whenever it is using the view, then uh, view is only the way by which we can interact with the software, but all the business logic will be controlled by this controller. So business logic like how to calculate possibly the pension of a particular employee, the salary of a particular employee, anything related to the business is controlled by this controller. Now, the controller sometimes require model which actually stores the state of possibly state of the client. So, suppose user is sending some information, that information is collected by the controller, and then controller want to store that state. So it basically give that state to the model if model stores that state somewhere, and then if there is any changes, then it modify the view also, right? So this is what the MVC platform look like. So controller actually manipulates the data and give the data to the model. The model updates the view according to the data, according to the decision made by the controller. So every time the user is going to interact with the software using the view always communicate with the controller. View has nothing to do with the model, and then the controller take some decision about the view, and then that decision will be fulfilled according to the model, uh, 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 according to the need of the user. But if the user want if the software required to store the state of the user, then we go for the model part. So this is what the Spring MVC is. This is what the MVC is. Now the MVC has different form. MVC only says that we need to divide our concerns, we need to divide our modules into the three parts. One is the presentation logic, that is view. One is the business logic, that is the controller, and one is the persistent logic. That means if the state of the client need to be saved somewhere, then that will be the model. So that is what the Spring Framework MVC is, breaking down the code into three layers: presentation, business logic, and persistence. That means view, controller, and model. So that is what that is what the MVC is. Now let us see how the Spring framework fits into this MVC architecture. So this is a Spring MVC architecture based on the MVC framework. So how it look like? See, the user is interacting with the software using the view. So through the view, it is generating the request. So that request is handled by a controller called front controller. Now the front controller is uh, uh, basically a component which takes major decision in the software development in the Spring framework. It is major component which is making all the decisions in Spring framework, MVC framework. So whenever the request is coming, then that request should be handled by a controller or the backend controller. So the request is delegated to that particular controller. How that delegation is performed? There are uh, some configuration is required so that the front controller must know that which request should be handled by which backend controller. So once the request is delegated or given to this controller, then this controller uh, may require to communicate with the model, possibly because this controller had decided to store the state of the client. So somehow this controller is communicating with the model, and after communicating with the model, or possibly this particular controller do not require to go for the model, it actually returns um, the model object to the front controller. Now what this model object is? This model object is used to render the response. What do you mean by rendering the response? It actually defines how which particular view will be sent as a response, and on that view what should be the data available so that the user can see the exact response. So that is what the Spring framework is. So once the model is returned to the front controller go to the view part and then select the appropriate view and return that view to the client, right? So this is how the Spring framework, MVC framework works. So once again, if there is a request, then obviously all the requests should come to the front controller. Then the front controller take a decision that this request should be handled by which backend controller. So what is the backend controller? It is also a decision maker, but it takes decision about the business logic. It is not taking any decision regarding any kind of flow. The flow control will be decided by this front controller. So it only concentrate on the business logic, and after fulfilling all the business logic requirement, it returns a model object to the front controller. Now this model object contains basically the two parts. The first part is actually the logical view name which should be rendered, and second the data which should be transferred to that particular view. So this model thing actually encapsulating two things: name of the next view, and if there is any data which I want to show on that particular view, then that data is here. So the front controller will go to the view and supply that data so that the rendering of that data should be done, and then the front controller sends a response back to the client. So this is what the Spring framework is. Spring Web framework is. We will discuss about programming and other stuff in the next video, how to write programs and other part of the Spring framework in the next video. So thank you for watching this video.